Hey everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of our series entitled To Consider and Praise. I'm Pastor Zach McGowan, and I am so glad you've taken this time to journey with us through the Psalms. You know, this Thursday is Thanksgiving here in the United States. And in fact, today is the last edition of To Consider and Praise for 2020. We're going to be taking a break for the holidays. And Thanksgiving kind of kicks off the holiday season here in our country. It's the one day when we are called as a nation to be thankful. But thankful to whom? Thankful for what? Yeah, I'm not entirely sure to whom unbelievers are thankful. And even amongst unbelievers, they may be skeptical of why we, those of us who follow Jesus Christ, why would we be thankful to the Lord? I mean, especially right now, things seem so bad. Pandemics, political drama, radically disrupted economy. Unbelievers could look at the world and say, see, how can you be thankful to God when so much seems wrong? And it would be a fair point if it were not for Psalms like Psalm 28. Psalm 28 reminds us that yes, there are problems in this world, but God is still faithful. He has seen us through the past, and He will see us through in the future. Our confidence is not in the appearance of health and wealth, but in the certainty of who God is and His activities, even in the middle of seemingly chaotic and tumultuous events. So with that in mind, let's read Psalm 28 together. Of David. To you, O Lord, I call, my rock. Be not deaf to me, lest if you be silent to me, I become like those who go down to the pit. Hear the voice of my pleas for mercy, when I cry to you for help, when I lift up my hands toward your most holy sanctuary. Do not drag me off with the wicked, with the workers of evil, who speak peace with their neighbors while evil is in their hearts. Give to them according to their work and according to the evil of their deeds. Give to them according to the work of their hands. Render them their due reward, because they do not regard the works of the Lord or the work of His hands. He will tear them down and build them up no more. Blessed be the Lord, for He has heard the voice of my pleas for mercy. The Lord is my strength and my shield. In Him my heart trusts, and I am helped. My heart exults, and with my song I give thanks to Him. The Lord is the strength of His people. He is the saving refuge of His anointed. O save your people and bless your heritage. Be their shepherd and carry them forever. You know, what are you thankful for? You might be asking that question around the dinner table this Thursday. But what are you really thankful for, and why? Is there a way to foster a confidence in the Lord and a heart of gratitude even when things are tough and desperate? You know, as you read over Psalm 28 again, think about this psalm and what it has to say to our attitudes as we react to the difficulties in our lives. You know, when you think of the Psalms as a whole, they're really prayers, and they're songs offered by individuals and the community of faith for the sake of expressing the totality of the relationship between the covenant people and God. Even those psalms that have an explicitly musical purpose, those songs are still prayers. And the prayers come as utterances of all kinds, prayers of praise or cries for help, declarations of faithfulness by God and the people, and many more. And sometimes a psalm covers a wide range of prayers. I think that's the case with Psalm 28. Scholars, they take a lot of time trying to pin down each psalm according to specific types. And we've covered a lot of those types: individual laments, royal psalms, entrance liturgies, psalms of confidence, and more. And Psalm 28 has been categorized by various sources in each of those ways. It leads me to believe that certain psalms just defy categories because our prayers often defy categories. In the same way, there are elements that scholars try to use to determine the appropriate structure of all the psalms, and especially Psalm 28. But of all the options I've seen, there are none that give an adequate expression to the fundamental prayer nature of this psalm. And so for the sake of today's discussion, we're going to be looking at this psalm as a prayer in 4 movements. Verses 1 and 2 offer up a prayer of attention. The psalmist wants to be heard by God, needs to be heard by God, and he tells God plainly. And so verses 3 through 5, the writer offers up a prayer of protection. This is the key petition in this psalm, and it represents a thematic touch point for a lot of different psalms. That leads to verses 6 and 7, where the writer offers a prayer of individual praise. Understanding that the Lord's protection is his, the writer declares the immediacy and the passion of his thanksgiving. Finally, in verses 8 and 9, the writer calls for corporate praise, corporate confidence. What the psalmist longs for and is sure of for himself, he declares for the whole covenant people. So as we jump into verses 1 and 2, this prayer movement opens with an emphatic direction to the Lord. He says, "To you, O Lord." What does he need? He calls. He calls to the Lord. He needs God to hear him. That's the essential kind of thrust of these opening verses. This is a prayer of desperation, but I don't believe that the writer is experiencing the silence of God at that moment, and so he's desperate to the point of death already. Rather, in full dependence of God, the writer knows conditionally, if God does not answer, he's going to die. How do we know that he's feeling this sense of death impending if God doesn't answer? Well, he uses the expression, go down to the pit. He's going to go down to the pit if God does not answer. It's meant to direct the reader to think of the place of death, more commonly called Sheol in the Old Testament. We've seen this expression in Psalm chapter 6. We're going to see it again. That image of despair is counterbalanced then with the image of the Lord as the writer's rock. The Lord is the rock. If he doesn't have the Lord listening to him, he's going to go down into the pit. And throughout the Psalms, most recently in our previous Psalm, Psalm 27, the rock means stability. So even though the writer is in a place of anguish, he's approaching Yahweh with a sense of confidence. Additionally, the prayer carries with it this idea of worship. In verses 2, in the very end of verse 2, he asks to be heard with a very interesting posture, with his hands lifted toward the holy sanctuary. I'm in the sanctuary at First Presbyterian Church here in Lakeland, but in the Old Testament, the holy sanctuary was the place of God's holiest presence. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that only a priest could be offering this prayer. Indeed, the whole community of Israel was aware of the precious presence of God in the sanctuary. It was the centerpiece of all corporate worship. Typically, the sanctuary in a church today, that's the centerpiece of corporate worship. But there again, though the writer is in despair, the stability of the covenant, as represented by that worship, is definitely in view. And the stability of that covenant and all that the covenant carries with it, the writer holds himself even when he's in pain and seeking God to listen. And so with this prayer of God's attention leading the way, he offers the second movement in his prayer in verses 3 through 5. This prayer of protection. These verses offer the most direct expression of what the writer needs from the Lord. He needs protection. But protection from what? In verse 3, the problem the writer faces is at first one of justice. He needs protection from injustice. He's concerned about being counted with sinners. To be dragged off is to be counted along with evildoers. The writer is concerned for God to listen to him according to his own righteous acts, as opposed to the deeds of the wicked. That, again, does not mean that the author thinks he's sinless. We've talked about this at length. But he doesn't want to be counted with those who practice wicked deeds. And the description of the wicked is telling. They are hypocrites. They speak words of peace to their neighbors while at the same time harboring evil intentions. Thus, as many Psalms point out, the wicked are liars, liars with the intent of self-aggrandizement at the expense of those around them. The work of their hands, Psalm 28 tells us, in their hands is pride. The author brilliantly contrasts those evil works with the works of the hands of God. The evil seek a reward for their work, but they have no desire to give any due to God. Their hands seek their own promotion with no regard to the hands of God who got them there. So the psalmist asks that they receive a reward for their work, but their work is evil. So their rewards are actually punishments. Also at issue, alongside the psalmist's call for justice, is the glory of God. God is not receiving the worship and the honor he's due by these wicked people. In their hubris, in their pride, they've denied that God has anything to do with their lives. So the writer wants the Lord to receive all glory, honor, praise, and worship. He's lifting his hands to the holy sanctuary. So he does not want to be counted according to their ways. And so in verse 6 and 7, he does offer praise. He offers a prayer of praise. And the question that lingers for the reader is one of completion. Is the writer declaring his praise for the Lord and his confidence in the Lord because he's already been answered in his plea? Or is he confident because he's anticipating a future salvation? Simply put, yes. Both are in view. In many ways, the psalm calls to mind an eschatological reality, the already but not yet of God's kingdom. Not to get too philosophical, but the Lord's not bound by time the way that our prayers, our requests are. In essence, he's already answered prayers we have yet to offer. The psalmist is confident in the Lord's provision and salvation because, like a rock, it's solid even when it's not being relied upon. It's solid in the storms and in the calm. The Lord is the Lord at all times and in all ways. So the writer can declare his confidence whether, from a chronological standpoint, the prayers have been answered. The eyes of faith, they see anticipation as reality. The eyes of faith see the future glory and restoration as presently accomplished, whether they've been applied with reference to our current timeline or not. It's precisely because the Lord is and always is the strength and the shield that those who follow God always trust him and can give thanks to him. While despair may linger for a time, while desperation may visit us in the night, our faith reminds us of the strong certainty of the Lord in his presence. And the way the writer expresses this confidence and gratitude is with the imagery of the heart. It's an intentional contrast with the evildoers who hold evil in their hearts in verse 3 as they speak to their neighbors. In verse 7, it's from the heart of the faithful that praise rises up to the Lord. It's from the heart of those who follow God that worship and honor are offered to him. The heart of the person of God. They long to exalt God, to honor God, as opposed to the wicked who only want to honor themselves. And so what the author prays for himself, he prays for all people. Where will the strength of the people come from? The same place as the writer. It's the Lord alone, and he is a salvation for the anointed. Now that term anointed was often associated with the king. And as we've discussed with past royal psalms, like Psalm 20, for example, the destiny of the king is fundamental to the destiny of the people. God saves the monarch, so the people are saved as well. As the king leads and guides the people according to the laws of God, as he leads with faithfulness, so the people follow with faithfulness. And just as the writer expresses both confidence from past salvation of the Lord and anticipating the future salvation of the Lord, verses 8 and 9 reflect a similar characteristic for the people. God is the strength and the refuge of the community of faith and the anointed. At the same time, the author asks God to save again. Now, there are two key images that close out this psalm. On the one hand, the people are called the heritage or the inheritance of the Lord. And this is kind of a strange image. Why does God need an inheritance? Why does he have an inheritance? But think about it this way. An inheritance is something that is typically demonstrates the historical value, the long-term value of a person's work. A person works hard, they earn a significant living, for example, over the course of their whole lives. They make a lot of money, and so they're able to leave that to the people that follow them. Heritage can carry with it the same idea, even with those less concrete values. Those values can be passed on to others. In Deuteronomy chapter 4, Moses warns the people that they're going to be tempted to worship idols when they enter the promised land, because that's what the Canaanites do. They're going to be tempted to worship idols, and so Moses warns them not to worship idols. And part of the rationale to avoid idolatry, he says in verse 20 of Deuteronomy 4. He says, "But the Lord has taken you and brought you out of the iron furnace, out of Egypt, to be a people of his own inheritance, as you are to this day." The image of inheritance or heritage, it comes up at various points in the Old Testament. And the point of the image is to indicate that it is the relationship that God has established with his people that demonstrates truly who he is. God is the creator, but he's more than the creator. He cares for, he rescues, he corrects, he guides his people. He's not just some transcendent over us kind of God. He's a loving, immanent, with us kind of God. That's why the second image of this final verse is significant as well. The people are the Lord's heritage, and the Lord is their shepherd. Obviously, Psalm 23 speaks volumes about the idea of the Lord as shepherd, but the image is one of protection and care. It calls to mind the entire history of God's people. And as the psalmist closes this chapter, he demonstrates that this is an eternal promise forever. And we, in the New Testament era, we know this is true in Jesus Christ. We have a good shepherd who lays down his life for his sheep. We know he carries a name that is above every other name, a name that every knee will bow before, every tongue will confess that Jesus Christ is Lord. Additionally, Psalm 28 reminds us of the already and not yet nature of the kingdom of God, which is most fully exhibited in Jesus Christ. Jesus inaugurated the kingdom of God, and we know that that kingdom has already begun, but we are still in this period of waiting, of continuation. Our activities on this earth, then, we are called to expand that kingdom reach because it's not reached its fullness yet. The kingdom is already here, but it's not yet completed. And so Jesus teaches his disciples to pray, "Thy kingdom come," as a future hope, but at the same time to equally pray, "Thine is the kingdom." It's a present reality. We may have moments of despair and hardship, moments when the brokenness of this world calls us to doubt the real presence of Jesus, the real presence of the kingdom, but we can, with the psalmist, be certain that our calls for aid and protection, they're not falling on deaf ears. We're certain, because of the life, death, resurrection, and ascension of Jesus Christ, that God is still our refuge, our shield, our strength, our rock, and our shepherd. Ultimately, he will protect us, so we can fully exalt and worship and give thanks to him with all of our lives. Will you join me in prayer? Oh, gracious God, we thank you and we praise you in your sanctuary that you are God, that you are our strength, our shield, our rock, our shepherd. Lord, help us to lean into you in times of our deepest anguish, our most difficult trials, knowing that you hear us and you care and you are doing something about it. You already have. You promised that you would. Help us to lean into that today and be thankful for all that you have done and will do in our lives. This we pray in Jesus' name and for his sake. Amen. Well, thank you once again for joining me, everybody. And if you would like to dig deeper into this psalm, the last one that we're going to cover this year before 2021, you're invited to a Zoom discussion on Monday at 7 p.m. It is a Zoom discussion. You need the login information. To get that login information, email me at the address below. We'll see you guys next time in January as we pick up with Psalm 29.